Hey guys, it's Jen and Kelly. Welcome to Her Book of Job, the podcast.
What a conversation we have in store for you today. It's only the second episode. It's called Color Me Happy, and we are delving into some controversial topics about colorism. Yep, we're going there today. We're going to talk about colorism, beauty standards, and just how it affects one's self-esteem. So stick around.
Each night, without fail, she prayed for blue eyes. Fervently for a year, she had prayed. It had occurred to Kaale some time ago that if her eyes, those eyes that held the pictures and knew the sights, if those eyes of hers were different, that is to say, beautiful, she herself would be different. Toni Morrison, The Bluest Eye. I thought that this quote was the perfect quote for this episode because it really explains what it feels like to want to grab a hold of the standard of beauty that is placed in the media, right? We have this little girl, Kaale Breedlove. All she wants is these blue eyes because she feels that if only she had blue eyes, the world would see her through a different lens. And she would also, in turn, see herself through a different lens. She would be more beautiful. She would have more opportunity. She would have a better family. And so I really find it interesting how Toni Morrison kind of dissected this feeling that a lot of us do have when we feel inferior comes to standards of beauty in society. And I just thought it was it was fitting. It's something that I've related to. Kaale Breedlove is one of those stories in, one of those characters that I've really grown to, actually not grown to love or more so understand, let's say more so understand, because at certain points in my life, I've definitely felt like Kaale. I've wanted metaphorically the blue eyes.
Wow. Okay, that's kind of crazy. I feel like both of us have our own stories about colorism and how we've dealt with it, and so I'm kind of curious before I share the things that I've experienced with colorism. We're two brown skinned girls, so obviously it's like you cannot have our skin tone and go through this life unscathed by colorism. Like, it's just not going to happen. You're going to deal with racism, and you're definitely going to deal with colorism. So I'm kind of interested to know, in what ways do you find that you can relate to Kaale? What are your own experiences with colorism?
I have not had a specific instance in my adult life where I can totally say that someone has outright called me ugly because of my dark skin. Rather, I've allowed society's standards of beauty to affect the way I view myself and to affect the way I view other people in the sense of, how they view me. I was watching on Instagram one time, and you know how you have those rap battles, right? And these two black men were in a rap battle, and this one man was speaking about another man's daughter, and his daughter is a dark-skinned little girl. And he says, every time I put up a picture on Facebook of my daughter, she gets like 500 likes. Every time you put up a picture of your daughter, she only got 8. And there's this notion that light skin comes with more acceptance, right? This is what he's saying. And he's like, your daughter is going to have high insecurities and low self-esteem. And he even devalued this man's young daughter to say that he would prostitute his 6-year-old daughter because of her dark skin. Right. And this is the perception that society has kind of placed. When you're dark skinned, you're at the low of the low. The darker the skin, the lower you are. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that this man would put this other man's daughter so low. And that just brought me back to the feelings that I had as a child.
A lot of us Black people have really internalized feelings of self-hatred, of just hatred of our own skin color. We perpetuate it, we pass it on, we make dating decisions, sometimes some of us based on skin color. And for some, it's a lot deeper. For others, it's more like, okay, it's just a preference, but it's not like a hardcore line. But you've got some people that's like, no, I will not date someone who is this skin color. And I mean, both men and women do it. That's the dating stuff. And but I'll just go back a little bit and talk about my childhood. I've had, I think, a more direct experience with colorism, I think, than you have in terms of like childhood anyway. Um, so I'm Haitian, and colorism is a huge thing in our culture. I think people are still now just trying to get out of that thinking. You know, everybody's trying to get woke these days. So, but for the most part, that's a huge thing. I mean, the bleaching business is a huge thing in Haiti in terms of like beauty products that people use and stuff like that. But anywho, my mom is lighter skinned than I am. I have the same skin complexion as my dad. And I remember being maybe, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years old, somewhere around there. And a friend of the family came over and was visiting my mom. And in our culture, when people come over, you know, you got to come out wherever you are and greet everyone with a kiss and say hi and all that other stuff. So this person hadn't seen me in a long time. They hadn't seen me since I was an infant. And I remember them saying, when I came out to greet everyone, I remember her saying, "Oh my gosh, like what happened? She had such a nice color. She got so dark. She used to have such a nice color and now she's so dark and blah, blah, blah." And I just remember feeling so embarrassed. I mean, can you just imagine you are a little girl with a budding self esteem? Like, I mean, as a young girl, your self esteem is fragile anyway. These are the moments that are building it for later, right? I mean, that one comment, I've had to work through that for years to come, and she had no idea. But this is the kind of thing that happens where it starts to shape your inner voice. It shapes how you see yourself when you look in the mirror. So what she was communicating to me in that moment and that to that little girl was, I used to be prettier when my skin was lighter. But ever since, you know, getting older and playing a lot more outside at recess in the sun, I mean, I grew up in South Florida, so the sun is fierce and I'm tanning and I'm outside playing as a little girl. And so that was communicated to me very early that I would be prettier if my skin complexion was lighter. And so I think that nugget just stayed with me for a very long time. And I've had to really work on that growing up and going through my teen years and all of that stuff. Like, just really had to work on accepting my complexion, accepting what I look like, really fighting back those thoughts that no, you're not pretty because you're not like skin like her, right?
An important thing that you said there is learning throughout your life how to accept yourself. I think that's an important fact.
All those things, you know, they kind of stick with you, and you use them to figure out, okay, are you pretty or not based on these standards. And so then you try to do things to meet those standards. Now, the good thing that I will say about me though was that even though I struggled with my skin tone, I don't think I was like Pacola, where I never wanted to be white, or I don't think I wanted like lighter skin. I think I just struggled with accepting me as I was for a while. But I don't think I never went into the whole bleaching or wanting to do stuff like that. We don't grow up in vacuums. We are constantly interacting with the culture around us, and it influences us in one way or another. Anything closer to white is more beautiful.
When I was living in Korea for a short time, I went to buy some face products, and the person who was helping me find these face products asked me if I wanted like a whitening cream. And then when I traveled over to Thailand, I was just so surprised that when when I would look up and I would look up at the billboards, right? I would see the people that I would see were very light skinned Thai people. But then when I brought my eyes down and I looked at the people just walking around Thailand day to day, they were more tanned than the people that I was seeing in the advertisement. So now if I'm looking at Thailand and I'm looking at advertisements of Thailand and I'm just seeing all these light skinned people, it would be such a shock to me to reach Thailand and just see that most people just walking around in their day-to-day lives don't look like that. So I definitely think from a small child, that is what I saw in the media, right? That is what is constantly shown in the media. So I think it needs to be rectified from a media standpoint. I think we need to see more versatility in the media.
What I'm realizing, what we're doing right now by creating, is we are making ourselves part of the media. And so I feel like you're right when you're saying it's up to media or partly up to media to rectify this. But what we need to see is that we've got to infuse our voices into media. We've got to be creators. And I just want to shout out Issa right now because she's amazing and I love her so much. And I think that we need more people to just share their stories and share their voices. And the more that we are creating, the more we get to put our faces and our voices in front of people. And that's what representation is all about. That's what shifts the narrative as to what is normal and what is beautiful. But if we kind of leave it up to other people, that'll never change because they'll always uphold the status quo beauty standards. It's up to us to become content creators and to get out there and share our stories so that other people are like, oh my gosh, I can totally relate. And, I love the fact that you have Issa as an example who is creating content featuring, starring as the main person, not the sidekick, but this Black woman with textured hair that's not all straight and whatever, and she's not perfect and she's deeply flawed, and that's okay. That's a very big part of what I want to bring out in this conversation today. If we're going to combat colorism, then part of that is to create stories where we get to share beauty in all shades and uphold it all up to the light as beautiful, and not demean one over the next. I think that's the issue with colorism. We need to show that all shades of black or brown or whatever, all the shades are beautiful in their own way, and not one is better than the other, and not one should be glorified or exalted above the other.
You heard it here, folks. Be the media. Be what you want to see in the media. Put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to showcase your beauty to the world. It's time for you to stand up. It's time for you to get in the ring. It's time for you to sit at those tables. I hope I'm speaking to somebody today. It's time for you to go forth with all the courage, without the fear of being rejected for color of your skin. What I want to know, Kelly, did Job have any insecurities in respect to his appearance?
Job didn't go through anything relating to his complexion, at least not that I know of, right? But he did have skin issues, and I can only imagine he had insecurities because of his skin. Because if you're familiar with the story of Job, after he went through that first tragedy with losing a lot of his loved ones and his property, um, the devil went back to God and was like, hey, he's only still faithful to you because you haven't hurt him physically and stuff like that. And so his second test was that his own health began to fail. And he was struck, it says, by the devil with terrible boils from head to toe. So he had this skin disease, right? His skin was like peeling off. It even says in Job chapter 2, verse 8, that Job scraped his skin with a piece of broken pottery as he sat among the ashes. Like he was just picking at it. So I can only imagine that he did not feel too good about what he looked like at that time. And it was probably painful. I feel like he can at least relate to what we're talking about today in the sense of just having insecurities and having questions about his own maybe value and self-worth because of what is happening to him and what is going on with his skin.
Right.
And but there's hope, right? There's this beautiful declaration of faith and trust that Job says to his friends in Job 19, verse 26. He says, "Even after my skin is destroyed, yet from my flesh I shall see God."
Wow.
Yeah, and I think what's really beautiful about that is that Job is helping us anyway put this conversation in its proper perspective. In light of eternity, our flesh, our skin will be destroyed. I mean, our bodies will fade away. The Bible tells us we'll get new bodies. And so in those new bodies we will see God.
Mm.
So I feel like in light of all of this, what we can really take from the book of Job is to just put this conversation about colorism in its proper perspective, and that it is temporary. It is just one of those things that will fade away.
Mhm.
And yeah, and what's important is that we'll get new bodies, and in those new bodies, we'll be able to be with God and see God.
That is amazing. I think that is a perfect way to end this episode is this is temporary. All these insecurities, all these feelings are temporary, and the ultimate goal here is to see God. And I think that's amazing to see God. And when we see God, we will be anew, right? So all of these things will fade away, and I'm so grateful for that.
Absolutely. All these things won't matter anymore at that point. And yeah, so I hope you guys were encouraged today by this episode. I know it was a very difficult topic to discuss. Jen and I were uncomfortable, but that's all right. We were sitting in our own ashes and scraping off our own boils as we talked about this today. And I hope that you guys benefited from it, and I know that this might be like a little bit of a trigger for some of you, and so if you need some place to work out some of that trauma, please follow us on IG at Her Book of Job. We want to hear your stories about how colorism has affected you, how it has impacted the way that you view yourself, maybe the way that you date, or how has it impacted you in your career in the workplace. Like, share your stories with us. We want to put you in the spotlight, and if you just kind of want to show off how amazingly beautiful your skin tone is, you could do that too. Just send us a pic, and we'd love to just put it on our page and celebrate beauty in all the different shades it comes in.
Yes. Thanks, guys, for joining us on another episode of Her Book of Job, episode 2. Until next time, guys, peace.